Change is almost always volatile, and that's why I'm preparing for trials and tribulations here in the United States based on a lot of the recent information we've been given and a lot of the change that's occurring. And of course, there's always going to be resistance to change, and that's going to cause us some obstacles and challenges moving forward. And I wanted to go over some of the things that just recently happened to demonstrate why you should be prepared for this. Now, of course, I do want to mention that Midway USA is the biggest supporter of the channel, and thanks to them, I can get out here, give you information like this, and give you a great place to find preparedness-related gear and equipment. So a big thanks to Midway USA for supporting what I do here. Now, we just had that drone attack on Chernobyl, which is obviously going to raise the stakes in the area. The drone was carrying explosives and damaged the containment vessel there of reactor number 4, which is the reactor where there was a meltdown, of course. Now, as of right now, the radiation levels are reported as being normal according to the IAEA, but we have a little bit of back and forth going between Ukraine and Russia right now, which is very detrimental to the idea of peace negotiations that are supposed to be occurring. Now, of course, this whole World War III scenario hasn't necessarily been resolved, right? So this always has the ability to escalate further, which is problematic for everyone. And right now, Ukraine is saying they can demonstrate that this attack came from Russia based on the flight path of the drone, based on the technology and the hardware that they found within the debris. But of course, Russia is also claiming that this is a false operation to screw up peace negotiations that may favor Russia's position more than Ukraine. So there's a lot of things to consider here, but the main takeaway here is that this is still ongoing. And of course, when you look back into 2022, when this invasion of Ukraine first occurred, we had a lot of intelligence coming out about Russia's purported use of false operations to try to change narratives or try to basically force the hand of the West, or at least at the minimum justify their actions within areas of the Donbass. And this operation doesn't necessarily align with a lot of those takeaways from back then regarding the likelihood of them using false operations, because the understanding at the time was that they would be used on Russian territory or on Russian civilians to spur that justification. And this isn't necessarily that. So it's a very questionable situation, but regardless, this is something that demonstrates that that whole situation has not been resolved and could easily turn into something much more dangerous in a very short period of time. Now, we also just had gold hit almost $3,000. In fact, it hit its record high of right over $2,940 just the other day. Now, that's a sign of the weakening dollar, which is obviously problematic for anybody in the US. And of course, this is also due to the uncertainty around all the new tariffs being rolled out by President Trump. And we also had the Federal Reserve come out saying that they're holding off on cutting interest rates because they're not really sure how all of this is going to play out. So that all kind of combines into this large economic issue that kind of demonstrates how close we are to the edge of a proverbial cliff. Now, I think personally that some of the recent strategies coming out of the White House are mostly for the purpose of saving the economy before it actually hits rock bottom. But I don't know that for a fact, and this could all just be part of what has to happen during this repairing process, but it also could be unintentional damage. So there's a lot to consider there, but regardless of what is happening or what is causing it, your thought process needs to be focused on the fact that no matter what, it just shows that the dollar is weakening, the dollar is worth less than it was before, and your buying power is much less than it was before as well. We also have the reciprocal tariff threat, which is part of gold hitting such a record high price, because the reciprocal tariffs are going to cost more money, at least in the interim. And I think the idea behind this is to eventually save us money and grow our economy. But for now, it's going to make life more difficult. And what a reciprocal tariff is that basically we're trying to charge countries the same as what they're charging us. So the fair and reciprocal plan was put out by the White House on February 13th. And that's obviously implementing reciprocal tariffs. And for example, right now, Brazil charges 18% on ethanol exports to the US, but we only charge them 2.5%. And so the idea behind this reciprocal tariff plan is to say, well, we either need to both charge 18% or both charge 2.5%, but you can't charge us more than we're charging you. That's just like the, we'll just say layman's way of looking at it, but that's basically what's going on there. And you can see how that could be very economically disturbing throughout the entire world. Speaking of that, let's talk about economic disturbances that just recently happened that I believe were not organic and definitely on purpose. This is China's AI gamble that they just came out with DeepSeek, which is their new AI language learning model that they came out with and claimed to have made with barely any investment and using older chip technology. And costing way less in energy than all of the other AI language models that are out there right now. Well, these efficiency claims by DeepSeek were so strong that it actually caused the largest single day market loss in history for a company. And that was, of course, NVIDIA, where they lost a ridiculous amount of money in one 24-hour period, all because of basically speculation about how good this new AI model was and how efficient it was to design. But now, at this point in time, it's very much seen as being overhyped and likely exaggerated in its ability to perform using the technology it's supposedly used in order to compete. So that is just another example of how quick one of our foreign adversaries like China can easily disrupt our economy and easily hurt us financially without even actually having to put in the work, time, or effort to do so. All they have to do is make claims, provide some sort of actual physical product or representation that can back up those claims, at least in a short-term period, and then the market will react to it regardless of whether or not those claims are valid. And so that is another form of fifth generation warfare that you should expect to see more of here moving forward. When an adversary finds out that they can wreck that much value in the stock market by just claiming things based off of something that they are currently rolling out, they're going to learn from that and most likely use it again in the future. And of course, one of the big ones that I think everyone's kind of watching out for right now is going to be political violence, especially directed at DOGE, or the Department of Government Efficiency, because what they're doing is unprecedented and what they're doing is very disruptive. And of course, a lot of people are getting very concerned about what it is they're doing. But I find it interesting and somewhat concerning about how many people are opposed to the idea of investigating and auditing corruption and waste of taxpayer dollars. And unfortunately, that's just how it looks to me and what I would like to see resolved. But there are a lot of people who are purportedly against it, which I find to be odd. But regardless, those who are very much against it, especially who are inside of the system and likely to be, let's just say, implicated by some of the investigations that are currently ongoing, well, they're actually pushing for people to react to it in a very negative way, because these audits are creating a lot of upheaval within the federal government, within the bureaucracies, and within those who are tied to those institutions. And now the NPCs that are out there that don't really think for themselves and aren't necessarily, let's just say, capable of higher levels of research or learning, are taking the advice of these leadership types and saying, you're right, we have to do something. And that's problematic because some of these people have demonstrated here just in recent history that they're more than willing to do something. And now there's been multiple calls of violence against DOGE employees or against Elon Musk or against the entire institution itself, which is problematic because, well, it kind of demonstrates that those who are being pushed right now and those who are being squeezed are going to try their best to force the hands of those who aren't necessarily capable of making decisions for themselves and hoping that the outcome is favorable to their cause, let's just say. So these are the trials and tribulations that we're currently going through and that we're currently witnessing here in the country that have just recently occurred and just serve as good reminders of what's to come, what to expect, and what to prepare for. And obviously, all the things we've been prepping for are still on the table and still worth being ready for. And I understand the optimism of this new administration. I understand the optimism of getting rid of government corruption and spending and waste and everything else. I understand the optimism of, gold going up because a lot of us had precious metals before all this occurred. So it feels like, your investment is performing well. But at the end of the day, the optimism here is not a good reason or a justification to stop preparing. You should use all this information as a motivator to get through to the next level, so that way, if things do improve, we'll be positioned to be very well off during those times. But if things don't improve, or if anybody tries to pull a switch to sabotage any efforts or progress that's being made currently, you'll also be ready to deal with that and whatever aftermath then ensues. And look, regardless of anything, there's still always the chance that something out of our control or out of humanity's control in general can just go off the rails. And we just have to be ready for that regardless of who's in charge or who's got power or who's making decisions or anything along those lines. So I just wanted to kind of mention that because I've noticed there's been a little bit more complacency within the preparedness community ever since the election and ever since the inauguration. And I understand the reasonings behind it, but I also think that it's slightly misguided just because of how tumultuous our current situation really has become. So let me know in the comments below what other trials and tribulations you've been keeping an eye on and what other concerns you might have based on some of this new information that we have access to. And of course, if you do want to support the channel, the easiest way is to hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, share these videos, and try to get the message out where you can. And magicprepper.com is a great place to go if you want to find other resources such as networking, including a free Discord server. So without anything else to say about it, that's going to be it for Magic Prepper.